Welcome back, everyone. So, we are here with our next micro talk. So, some of us are super sweaty gamers who really need to make sure we get every achievement, every trophy, and we're completionists. And even for people like that, there is still a good and bad way to make really great achievements and make sure that they're not frustrating and that they can help everyone feel the joy of completion in a game. That is what our next video is about, and I do want to call out that we are going to see that the title that's going to show up in this video doesn't match the website. It is the right video. The title changed after the video had been edited, so the website and the Discord have the correct name, but it's the right talk, I promise. So just wanted to call that out so no one was confused. Thank you.
Hello everyone, uh, welcome to my talk, The Earning Curve, Unlocking the Joy of Completion for Every Player. I'm Cameron Keyword, a lived experienced accessibility consultant with APX certification. I'm autistic. I was diagnosed at 4, so part of the early diagnosis group. I'm also a podcaster, review writer. I used to run an indie studio, and I have a master's in games enterprise. I've been gaming since the PS1. Anything older is like my wine knowledge. I know some of it's good, but it's not for me. Uh, I'm wearing a black snapback cap, have a big brown bushy beard, a round face, and wearing a navy blue t-shirt. You may be wondering, why am I giving this talk? Well, I'm a trophy hunter. Not the fat, sweaty, rich man on safari kind you may be imagining right now, but the PlayStation kind. That's how I engage with games. I may have a problem, but it is kind of productive, I do promise. As I'm recording, I've earned just over 38,500 since 2008, which puts me in the top 300 in the UK, top 3,000 globally. I'm also a big fan of statistics, so I like seeing all the different permutations of things that can happen. So whether that's promotions or relegations in football, or what finishing an old game does to my completionist percentage. So what's going to happen in the talk? Today, we're going to do a quick run through of the evolution of achievements, what motivates players to get them. Then we'll break things down to the good, the bad, and the ugly. A few personal examples from my own experience along the way. You may have a different experience, but at the end of the way, everyone interacts with achievements differently. So we're going to start in a very unexpected place, the 1970s. So before achievements, there was the high scores, 3 letters and bragging rights of the arcade. These systems rewarded optimal performance for players who chased top scores. There was no recognition of creativity. So, for example, there was no reward for completing a level of Pac-Man, only eating Clyde. Justice for Clyde. Now we jump to the 1980s. This is when Activision introduced patches. So players who set high scores in their games could send photographic proof of their accomplishment. In return, Activision would send them back a letter of congratulations and a collectible Iron-On patch badge. So the letter was really the first verification of success outside of the arcade, and was something and give something physical, like a tangible reward. And really was an early benchmark of what we know achievements to be like today, which leads us to 2005. This was when Microsoft launched Gamerscore, and with it standardized achievements on console platforms as we know them today. Sony followed with their trophy system a few years later, and now to release a game on the system they need to include either achievements or trophies. They pop instantly most of the time, and they are a social signal. Everyone can see them on each other's player feeds, and every account really has its own wall of fame. So it highlights not just what you've done, but often, for me personally, serves as a reminder of what I was doing at the time I was playing that game and what effort I put into that game. So now we know a quick evolution of them, but why do players bother? So what are the motivators? Part of why achievements are so compelling for many is they tap into the way our brains work. So humans like finishing tasks, and for some, myself included, unlocking our final achievement gives a satisfying sense of closure, even if just for a while. There's also an effect called the Zeigarnik effect, which is where unfinished tasks stick in our mind more clearly than finished tasks and give us a sort of nudge in the back to go back and complete them. We get rewarded with dopamine when every little pop-up and chime signals, and that also signals that our efforts are paying off with achieving something. And also, something we've all felt probably when buying something, the sunk cost fallacy. So since we've invested so much time and money, we want to get our money's worth and experience everything a game has to offer. But this is also a factor now due to the rising cost of games. So that brings us on to the good. So this is where I want to introduce some of the things I believe have been done to make the achievement system better for everyone. First up is accessibility options. Doom the Dark Ages is a good example of this. It has a game speed option to slow down enemies, which allows players who would never be able to play the game otherwise to be included and have the chance to get the achievements. Like the tagline, it is a Doom for all slayers. Some people may say accessibility is just about making everything easier, but for me that's not the case at all. This isn't a lowering of the bar, but a widening of the door. The second word in the title is options. So swapping button mashing for a hold or single press, high contrast modes, text to speech, adjustable text size, that's for your wobbles. Even tinnitus filters. None of these play the game for you, but remove friction. If someone tweaks their personal experience, it shouldn't affect yours. You can even increase the game speed in Doom to controller snapping difficulty if that's your thing. Nothing's been taken away from you, but it's just no longer being gatekept from those who need the option. Next up is multiple avenues. So this is all about offering different ways for players to progress. So for all the criticism it gets compared to the other games in the trilogy, Mass Effect 3 nailed this. Every multiplayer trophy has a single player unlock requirement. So for example, you can either reach level 15 in multiplayer or level 50 in single player to unlock the achievement. Either approach is valid. I can still unlock this today if I put up my PS3 and got to level 50, and it lets those late to the party still have their cake. The title chapter select is quite self-explanatory really. It's a way of letting players go back and still earn achievements. This is in so many games, but my personal example is Uncharted 4, as there's both a chapter select and a collectibles tracker. So these are great as missing items on your first go. It's not permanent. You can always go back, get them. Many people who go after achievements hate collectibles. So these options are welcomed as they reduce the frustration and encourage exploration without restraint as the system supports them. You can always go back if you miss something. Transparent objectives. So achievements should challenge, but it should come from doing what you need to do, not trying to figure out what it is. So I recently looked at Crimson Desert's achievement list and I couldn't work out what any of them unlocked. If I wanted riddles, I would have stuck Lingo on ITV. So having clear requirements is a big help, especially for someone like me. Knowing the goal, what success looks like, and it respects time as well. So Lego games nail this. Achievements are simple and direct. Complete the level, collect all the mini kits. Do this with character X and Y in your party. And achievements should test your ability and not well how you can interpret what they want you to do. Now we go on to the bad. So this is where achievement design is frustrating and limits people who can engage. These can be fixed, and if your favourite game appears, it's not a dig. All the games included in this section are great games. Playstyle restrictions. So this is when games don't reward you for engaging with the game in your own way, but it dictates how you should play. So don't get me wrong, playstyle-based achievements can encourage experimentation, but the main issue I think is imbalance. So Dishonored, you're rewarded for a non-lethal stealthy approach, but there's no recognition for a high chaos killing everyone playstyle. The stealthy playstyle is validated, the high killing one isn't. Personally, I think if you've reached the goal, that should be enough. Elder Scrolls V Skyrim does this well. Its achievements focus on quest lines, exploration, and not how you get there. You could be a stealth archer wood elf, a heavily armoured node, an Argonian mage. All counts the same. You're not second guessing about missing anything. Next is excessive grind. So some achievements demand an extreme investment of time, and this doesn't test your skill but your endurance. Gears of War has a seriously achievement which requires 10,000 multiplayer kills. The level of grind is a big fatigue setter. Players often stop not because they lack the skill to do the achievement, but if the demand is just unreasonable. Achievement hunters understand that developers want to keep players engaged in the game, and personally for me, sometimes doing a time grind is therapeutic, having done my fair share. But when 80% of the time spent on the game is for one solitary achievement, the balance needs to be sorted, and it does dampen the enjoyment of the game. Next is missable content. So achievements tied to this lock players out completely. Persona 3 Reload, there's an achievement for maxing out all the social links. I remember obviously trying to go for it and realizing quickly that if I didn't have a plan, I would miss a small step. And with that, I started following a guide. But it's not really the way I wanted to experience the game. It stops you from just enjoying it naturally, and you're always worried about triggering something or doing a misstep. It kills the sense of discovery, and perhaps the worst, it feels like admin, and nobody likes doing admin. Next is accessibility gaps. We talked about options just now. So when achievements rely on audio, visual cues, or reactions, they can shut players out. Blind players will hit a wall in games when achievements depend on spotting visual details such as items or patterns if there isn't an audio alternative. Deaf players will face issues when progress relies on hearing cues such as enemy alerts if there isn't any captions or visual indicators. For me personally, LA Noire is a good example. So you need to get 5-star case completions, which totally depends on reading subtle facial expressions. So, as someone who's autistic, I already have a challenge reading facial expressions, but reading facial expressions on a game whose tech still holds up today is even more tricky. Finally, we're looking at the ugly. These should be avoided at all costs and send a chill down my spine. And probably many people in the achievement community. Multiplayer. So, when achievements depend on other players, your own progress is no longer in your control. I ran it this last month with Battlefield Hardline. So servers are shutting down this year, and through the website psnprofiles.com, I partly helped to organise sessions to unlock multiplayer trophies with people. So I ended up renting the server. It cost me about £5 for a week, and through that week, I ended up talking and organising around 90 different players, all through group chat on a single voice, all to do tasks that would happen naturally, maybe 1 in 1,000 games. It's a great example of many people coming together to meet a common goal, but to have to do it in the first place isn't fun, and as such the achievement doesn't feel fun as well. It just feels like checking off a tick box. Next is randomness, or RNG, as it's better known. Players don't have any control in unlocking these. So for me in Justice 2, there's an achievement called Catfight, which is tied to unlocking an ability for Catwoman through the gear system. You could spend hours playing matches, opening hundreds and hundreds of the in-game crates, doing everything you see on YouTube tutorials, and not unlock it. It's down to chance. You put all the effort in, all the time in, and you may not have made any progress. And this makes achievements lose their meaning. It doesn't feel like something you've earned, but feels like you got lucky. And that is what makes these achievements perhaps the most frustrating. They're out of your control. Now we go on to glitched achievements. So these are when Someone has met the requirement, and for some reason, it hasn't unlocked. So this happened to me in Blueprints. There was notorious save file wipe glitch, and it reset my progress. So I met all the requirements for the entire list, and the achievement for unlocking all the trophies never unlocked, despite having them all unlocked, as the save file I had all the difficult ones on, such as completing the game in one day, disappeared into the ether. There's nothing I could do to fix it, and it is a sense of unfairness that gets amplified, especially when you spend hours and have your effort wasted by a technical issue. Next is Paywalled. FC26 has an achievement called All Aboard the Premium Track, which requires you to finish the Premium Season Pass. This isn't included with the base game. So if you bought the higher tier edition, you get, I believe, one for free, but if not, you have to pay £8 to unlock this achievement, to have any chance of unlocking it. So progress isn't about how you play or your effort, but it's about your wallet and how big it is. Just to be clear, not blaming the developers here at all. I truly believe this wasn't their call and was a decision from higher up. That being said, it completely devalues the system of achievements and what they're supposed to mean, and turns them from something that is being earned to something that feels like a transaction. In the infamous words of Porky Pig, that's all, folks. Thank you for listening. Scanning the QR code on the screen now will take you to all my social links. Happy to continue the conversation there or on the Discord. If you're a developer of any size interested in making your achievements more fun, feel free to reach out. Happy to help anyone from a solo dev to AAA. Thanks again.
I love how many things were called out that we could do to make more inclusive, more obtainable, and more realistic, and just better for people. One of the things I did want to call out that Elizabeth did post in chat, the other key thing is making sure that your talks, how did you phrase it, end in increments of 5 when doing point systems. No one wants their Xbox score to end in a 7 or end in a 4. Like, don't do that, and you will hear from players if you do. So, not something covered in the talk that I also wanted to call out. Um, you know, Key thing to know. And I also really resonated with this talk as a gamer. So, as someone who's been playing Resident Evil Requiem, it's a game that I do want to get all the achievements for, but, you know, don't get me wrong. I absolutely love an excuse to look at Leon Scott Kennedy as much as the next person. However, there are some of the achievements that leave me yearning for the map selection or the chapter selection from Resident Evil 5. Like one of the achievements is about using an axe to cut the licker's tongue. Another is about being able to beat it under a certain amount of time. And I really, miss when I could more time effectively get those kind of achievements. Like the liquors only exist in certain levels. If this were Resident Evil 5, I could just select that level and then only be able to do it there. Or if I know there's one chapter I'm just taking a little too long to beat, I could just do that single chapter rather than having to replay the entire game. That being said, I do still love Resident Evil Requiem. It's not perfect, but I still love her. So, again, just work on making your achievements approachable, accessible, and not frustrating. So, we are going to have another short 5-minute break, and we'll be back with our next micro talk. So, I will see you back here at 5 after. All right. We are already getting super goofy in the chat for this next talk. And not just because we're going to have a Kickstarter for wobbly gamer trading cards. No, no, don't apologize. Sorry, I'm not seeing. Are the captions working for people, or are they just not working for me? There we go. Okay. So, uh, you know, we've talked a lot about game accessibility for players. But in the gaming field, there's something equally as important, accessibility for the developers themselves. And that's what this next talk is all about. So get in the chat, get ready, and let's watch this video.
Welcome to my talk, Access Denied, The Illusion of Inclusion. Brogan, can we get a graphic to pop up, please? What do you mean it's not in the budget? The Illusion of Inclusion. My name's Mikey. I'm a 3D artist and an accessibility consultant. I'm also legally blind and I use a white cane to navigate. Milo sometimes tries to help, but he's pretty much the world's worst guide dog. Over the last 10 years, I've worked on everything from indie to AAA with teams all around the world. And guess what? All of it's been done fully remotely. We talk a lot about accessibility for the players with things like high contrast mode, subtitles, and controller remapping. And we absolutely should, especially considering that 80% of disabled players still face barriers that stop them from enjoying the game in the first place. And accessibility features are essentially just options. There's a little bit more to it than that, but they are options. And those options make the games more accessible for the players. But as developers, as employees, where are our options? Where's our accessibility? I'm talking about this because it's 2026 and it feels like the industry has taken 10 steps back. I'm not a bricklayer. I work on a computer with an internet connection, making video games. I shouldn't have to sit in traffic and navigate unreliable public transport just to sit in a virtual meeting and be told it's for team cohesion. We've given the players options to make the games accessible and playable for their needs. What about the needs of the developers and the people making the games? And this isn't just about people with disabilities. It affects parents, carers, people with dependents. What I'm trying to say is flexibility helps everyone. We all deserve access and no one deserves to be excluded for something that they can't control. So I'm going to give you the short version of this. In 2017, I was about 6 months into my first role in the industry, and we moved to a brand new office that had no open windows. It was just pure air conditioning being pumped into the room, and that air conditioning caused serious infections in both eyes, and my doctors basically advised that I work from home. And when I asked for a reasonable adjustment, which was also advised by the doctors to be able to work from home, the answer I got was basically, if I let you work from home, I'll have to let everybody work from home. I was then brought into a meeting room with my wife and was fired. Not because I couldn't do the job, but because I wasn't allowed to work from home as a reasonable adjustment. And that same studio supports charities who support disabled gamers, but they wouldn't support their own disabled employee. They also told me that if I ever disclosed my disability to anyone or any other studio, that I wouldn't get hired in the industry. But this is something I've noticed in the games industry, and it's not just limited to the games industry. The companies who push their values and shout about their values are often the ones who struggle when those values are put to the test. In the UK, disabled people are 30% less likely to be hired. Those kind of gaps aren't created by accident. Like, that's built into the way that we hire and the way that we work. A lot of studios talk about company values like transparency, fairness, equality, diversity, equity, and inclusion. All great values, and some studios have actually even won awards for those values. The issue is when companies have policies, the policies get in the way of those values. Let's say a studio has a 1 hour commute policy for all employees. If your company policy says all employees have to live within a 1 hour commute of the office, but your values on the wall say that you're inclusive, then the policy wins, and that inclusion then becomes exclusion. Some people with disabilities can't drive, like myself. It's not a choice. I just can't legally drive, and you definitely wouldn't want to be on the roads with me if I was driving. But those company policies where it says you have to live within a 1 hour commute, if you can drive, it might take you 20 minutes. But for me, living the same distance away might take me an hour and a half. So those policies are actually keeping disabled people out of work. About 18% of people in the games industry identify as disabled. That's 1 in 5 people in the games industry. That's 1 in 5 people who might need reasonable adjustments or might suffer because of those silly policies. And those are just the ones we know about. A lot of people tend not to actually disclose their disability. And those policies assume that you'll always be fit and healthy. I lost my vision and became disabled when I was 18. Life kicked me in the balls when I least expected it to. So it could happen to anybody. So at some point, someone who doesn't think they need those adjustments now might later in life need those adjustments. So this doesn't affect just me. This can affect anyone. And I think companies need to stop letting the policies override the values. If you truly are inclusive, then be inclusive. Allow people who need it to work remotely. We're not all the same and we can't be treated the same. I think companies need to stop it with the bullshit values and just be a little more human. The journey to work is often the first barrier that people with disabilities face. Companies shout about their values, but some companies shout about how accessible they are, with things like ramps, lifts, braille signage, accessible toilets. Those things matter, but they're usually the minimum legal requirement, and they make for great PR. So I did some research into a studio that not only promotes how amazing their values are, but the fact that the office space itself is accessible. So I looked a little deeper and found that the council actually owns the building that they're in. And it was the council who had put the accessibility features in there to begin with because of essentially the building itself was a modern building, so that was the minimum legal requirement for them to have accessibility features. And if they did have them and maintain them, they could get extra funding. So before the studio even signed the lease, they already had accessibility features in the building. It just worked out for the studio that they could push it and it'd look great for social media. It's just great PR for them. This is the issue. Focusing only on the building and only on the accessibility features inside the building misses much bigger questions like, can an employee with a disability actually safely get from their front door to the building and then back home again safely? Do you even hire people with disabilities, or are they just too difficult to accommodate for? And ultimately, do your policies disproportionately affect people with disabilities? Before a person with a disability even reaches the office door, they've probably already dealt with unreliable public transport. Say the bus doesn't turn up on time or drive straight past you. Last minute platform changes, or they couldn't get on with their wheelchair because the train or tram was too busy. And 60% of people with disabilities report barriers in transport. And then on top of all of that, there's the physical safety concerns. People with disabilities are twice as likely to be the victim of a violent crime. By the time an employee with a disability has turned up at the office, they're more than likely going to be exhausted, both mentally and physically. And let's say a car has mounted the curb or a train has been cancelled. Those things don't just make us late for work, they make work really difficult and make life really exhausting. The journey to the office for an employee with a disability is a topic that seems to get massively overlooked, especially in the conversation around inclusion and work-life balance. I'm trying to change that. I'm trying to bring that conversation back to the table and in front of people. We know that remote working works. The games industry accidentally ran the experiment during COVID. And guess what? The games industry didn't collapse. It thrived. We were able to expand our talent pools, disabled employment increased, people could move away from expensive cities to more affordable areas, and people got to spend more time with family. If the work that we do is digital and on computers, then your location is nothing more than a policy choice. When you remove flexibility, you remove access. It's like taking away high contrast mode, and now all of a sudden a lot of people can't play your game. And you're sat there wondering why the hell your player numbers have dropped. Something else that gets overlooked is sensory control. You can have your own customizable space at home. You can have the lighting how you want it. You can have figures and wallpaper however you want it to be. But that's your space, and that's where you do your best work. And that's a space that you can't have in an open plan office. Around 80% of people with disabilities wanted to keep the flexibility of remote working post-COVID. And now with this huge push towards return to office, it's keeping people with disabilities out of work. In the UK, the Equality Act exists to protect us, but actually enforcing those rights takes time, money, legal knowledge, and emotional resilience. And it's probably because of those things that less than 1% of discrimination cases go to tribunal. I've personally faced discrimination in the hiring process, in the workplace, and even on public transport during a commute when I was asked to prove my disability. I didn't know my rights then, so nothing came of those cases. But even for people who do know their rights, the process is still time consuming and it's absolutely exhausting. Here's a scary part. You won't ever find out about a lot of discrimination cases because companies choose to settle, and they do this so they can keep their reputation. You can join a union, but you have to know that they exist, and you have to be able to afford it. And it's not always affordable, especially with stagnating wages and rising bills. We've reached a weird point where those of us who need support the most are the least able to access it. Even with simple support, like when we ask for a reasonable adjustment, for most studios that's a lot of hassle and a massive inconvenience. And even if you are able to take legal action, it's both a financial and mental strain. And not to mention, you might even get shadow banned from the industry. Some people are willing to put their careers and livelihoods on the line to stop injustices from happening to others in the future. Accessibility and inclusion doesn't just start and end with the final product, whether it be a game or a website. And it doesn't start and end with words on a wall that make for great PR and look good on social media. It starts with options and the understanding that we're not all the same. Now, I've been talking about the benefits of remote working for the last 10 years, and even I know that it's not for everyone. But for many of us, it's the only way that we can still have equal opportunities. For many of us, it's the only way that we can still be included, even if we can't get into the building. I still think hybrid working is hilarious. So what, you telling me that you're only inclusive for 2 days of the week? Come on, sort it out. But there are still good studios and good people out there. People who don't see me for my disability. They only see me for my ability and what I can bring to the table. And actually allow me to make great games and bring teams together. It's not complicated. Ultimately, what I'm trying to say is, disabled people and disabled developers do want to work. But until we remove the barriers, we'll continue to be excluded and kept out of work. And inclusion will just continue to be empty words. But it's not all doom and gloom. Here are 3 things you can do right now as a studio to be more inclusive and more accessible. Offer remote working and reasonable adjustments. Remove commute and location-based filters. And just be flexible. Ask questions. We're not made of glass. We've spent years making the games industry more accessible for the players. I think it's about time we started making it accessible for the developers too. Even Milo approves of this message. Thank you so much for listening to me ramble on for the last 15 to 20 minutes. I appreciate you. Bye.
A QR code appears on screen. I'd love to connect on LinkedIn. One of the things that was called out was we did accidentally run the experiment, right? The whole world did on remote work. And we were able to do our jobs. I mean, frankly, I think if I, from the Seattle, Washington area, can co-host a conference for folks in the UK, anything's possible. But yeah, it's still a rough place to be in for someone with a disability just trying to work because the reality is you have to advocate for yourself, and it's so hard for people to be able to do that when there is a myriad of different laws and rules and organizations, and that's a lot of emotional labor on top of actual work and additional financial implications as well. But we can do better, and we can all push companies who say they are inclusive to walk the walk and not just talk the talk. With that, we will take another short break. We will be back 30 minutes after the hour, so see you back here in 8 minutes for our last micro talk of the day. All right, and it's officially time for our last micro talk of the day. So, game accessibility has been around as long as video games. The cat. Is that is that miso? We have a emote for miso in our Discord. So if I just wanted, I don't know if you knew that, um, but there is a miso emote because we love miso. Anyway, I was distracted. What was I talking about? Oh, that's right. Uh, Video game accessibility has been around just as long as video games themselves. And sometimes we lose track of these early influential people and the work that they have done to help widen the video game audience. So I'm so lucky that we get to sit and learn about one of these people who started in accessibility way before I was playing games. So let's check it out.
Hello everyone, and thank you very much for the invitation and your time. My name is Markus Spörer and I'm a researcher at the University of Tübingen in Germany. And I've been researching accessible game history for quite some time now. And there is comparatively little historical material or sources to be found on this topic, probably because in the earlier decades of gaming, like the 70s and 80s, both disability and gaming weren't a relation that journalism, game magazines, or the public in general were aware of. Yet one name keeps turning up in historical material on game controller accessibility, and that is Ken Yankelevitz. And today I would like to introduce you to his pioneering work. Starting in the 1980s, he began the non-commercial production of accessible game controllers. I will trace how Ken Yankelevitz, in collaboration with rehabilitation patients and different kinds of gamers, developed customized accessibility devices. I will also show you some of the affordable and standardized devices he distributed through his company KY Designs in 1981 to 2011. And finally, I turn to the Quad Stick by Fred Davidson, which is a continuation of Ken Yankelewicz's work. Now, issues of accessibility in gaming hardware and software have been present since the medium entered the mass market in the early 1970s. And unlike today, accessibility was not supported by the video game industry, likely due to the economic considerations and the assumption that disabled players did not represent the profitable market, or they weren't just not aware of them. Instead, disabled individuals, computer enthusiasts, local gaming communities, and small independent companies took the initiative to make games more accessible. Although accessibility solutions for the relatively simple systems of the 70s and 80s would have been feasible at an industrial scale, they remained largely undeveloped. Nevertheless, the history of accessible gaming is rich and complex, encompassing not only the barriers faced by disabled players, but also creative workarounds, such as modding, hacking, and alternative input practices. For example, as you can see here in this slide, modifications like the left-hand attack of an Atari controller or a simple adjustment using everyday objects could significantly improve usability. So as you can see here, this Atari controller is modified with a rubber band and a pen as to improve pushability, so to speak. Well, in the early years of gaming, like the 70s and maybe the early 80s, a wide variety of controller types for gaming existed, enabling different playstyles and accommodating diverse player bodies. If you only think of all the gimmicky and sometimes really weird controllers that can be found in early Pong consoles, you probably know what I mean. These controllers sometimes could be played with one hand, with feet, with the elbows, and in some cases experiments with speech input were even made. But with the introduction of the Atari VCS 2600 and the CX40 joystick, however, a standardized input scheme was established for the first time. And this implied a specific type of player body, namely one with two hands and thumbs, a certain level of strength and physical coordination. And this standard quickly spread across multiple video game and personal computer systems, and thus consequently marginalizing alternative forms of access and excluding certain groups of players. Well, as I told you, a historically relevant example and presumably one of the first professionals in gaming accessibility is Ken Yankelwitz, one of the first who took matters into his hands. He worked as a flight simulation engineer for Donald Douglas in the 1980s, and in his spare time he designed and built customized game controllers. As a flight engineer, Yankelewicz was not necessarily specialized in accessible technologies or game controllers, but he was highly knowledgeable in cutting-edge technology, control technologies, such as joysticks and alternative input devices. The initial request to apply his engineering expertise to video game accessibility came from none other than Atari in 1981. Yankelwitz recounts, "Atari referred me to a teenage quadriplegic in Pennsylvania who wanted to play video games. He was depressed and his family and church were searching for something to spark his interest in living after his accident." Now, after experimenting with different designs together with this young quadriplegic, Yankelewicz realized that for this audience it was impossible to acquire functional or affordable game controllers on the market. And although Yankelewicz designed and offered a functional prototype to Atari later that year, they rejected it for economic reasons. Yet, anytime a disabled person called Atari looking for an accessible joystick, Atari referred them to Ken, and that is basically how it started. Atari had likely referred Rancho Los Amigos National Rehabilitation Center in Downey to Yankelewicz as well, because the clinic contacted him shortly after. They sought his assistance in designing a control device for Kirk Kilgore, who was a former Olympic volleyball player who was paralyzed from the neck but had limited mobility left in his head and shoulders. And Kilgore was desperate to play video games. Together with Kilgore and other young patients, including children, Yankelewicz started testing various devices and methods. And after periods of 4 months of experimentation, this collaboration ultimately resulted in the creation of one of the first mouth-operated game controllers that was compatible with the leading gaming consoles, which were most notably the Atari 2600. So as you can see in this small image here, this controller features a lollipop-shaped disc that Kilgore can grab onto with his teeth. The joystick is mounted on a stand which clamps to a table on his wheelchair tray. This lollipop that allows for 4-directional movement is supplemented by a zip and puff tube that functions as the fire button, for example shooting a missile in an Atari game. And this is mounted on the side of the chair was a double pull switch for reset and select functions. And as I said, this is really hard to see here, and this is the problem is that you do not find any better images of this period or any period, to be honest, as far as Yankelewicz's work is concerned. But these still images here are the best we can get. On here you can see this is this lollipop-shaped stick I was talking about. And here you can see 2 children using the same technology to play an Atari game and the modified system, as you can see here. Yankelevich recognized that the players' bodies and their mobility varied greatly, so he crafted controller systems tailored to the specific needs of his clients. This allowed the operation of the game with the hands, the head, the tongue, or feet. His go-to approach was to examine common joystick models, such as the CX40, dismantle them, and recombine their parts with additional components, such as telephone keypads. He also used existing devices used in the clinic, such as sensitive switches, large buttons, or the zip and puff controls. The patients, drawing on their unique physical characteristic, preferences, and individual experiences, contributed greatly by suggesting ideas, designs, and refinements. An example for such a custom build is John Karasic's control system. This was a then 12-year-old patient with cerebral palsy who, according to Ken, has almost no control over the muscles in his body. John's favorite game then was Asteroids, which requires players to activate the right, left, and fire buttons of the joystick. So Ken rewire touch-sensitive switches to the circuit board of a standard Atari controller. Two switches were then attached on the head plate of John's wheelchair, as you can see here, allowing him to steer the spaceship in any direction by moving his head. A further switch that activates the fire button is attached to his wheelchair on his left knee, where he has enough muscle control to rapidly fire the spaceship's cannon. While this contraption allowed John to move only in two directions in 1983, after some training with the head switch, John realized that he could also use his foot. Ken then used this information to complete John's accessible control system, enabling him to play games that required a four-directional control scheme by attaching a button board to his wheelchair's footrest. You can see here in the enlarged image, and this controller type by Yankelevich later on became a standardized input device. Spread by word of mouth, Yankelevich's efforts circulated in disabled gamer communities, and it didn't take long before he became swamped with similar requests. Consequently, in 1981, he founded his company KY Enterprises and started the production of a series of versatile accessible controllers. Remarkably, he handcrafted his products in his spare time from his workshop at home in Long Beach, California, essentially on his own with the occasional help of his two daughters and his wife Diane. Although he continued to offer tailored solutions, he was able to develop a range of standardized designs that could be used by a broader population of gamers with disabilities. You can see some of them here. The standard models were those successfully introduced and tested in Los Ranchos, such as the head switch, a device similar to that of John Karasic's game system, or a wrist controller. You can see here, you can use that with your wrist, and there's no need for grabbing, for example, a joystick. By 1982 at the latest, Yankelevich began promoting his controllers in popular video game and computer magazines. He was featured in several newspaper articles, oftentimes praising Ken's work and highlighting the need for video game accessibility. In the image to the right, you can see Yankelevich in his workshop presenting a mobile and accessible game system. Nonetheless, the most widely recognized and advertised controllers from KY Enterprises were the mouth-operated zip and puff controller and the so-called fingertip controller with no joystick. This controller was originally designed by Yankelevich for and with persons with arthritis or cerebral palsy, who required sensitive buttons and faced barriers with the quick wrist response standardized joysticks required. The design addressed a critical issue. Traditional joysticks often posed significant barriers for individuals with one-hand mobility, muscle weakness, or those who needed to play using their mouth. For example, in Atari's CX40 joystick, the distance between the stick and the fire button was too far to allow simultaneous navigation and firing using either the mouth or a single hand, a requirement for nearly all games on the market at that time. And then with its clustered design, keeping all 4 directional buttons in a diamond-shaped group, the fingertip controller allowed for rapid, one-handed steering. Additionally, the Atari joystick was fairly unresponsive and required considerable force and hand movement to press the buttons. In contrast, the fingertip controller avoids this through light touch buttons and, as a less specialized device similar to arcade controls, it also appealed to non-disabled users. So this is probably the most widely sold device by Ken Yankelevitz. And by the way, this is the one that is put at the footrest of John Karasik's wheelchair. By 1998, Ken Yankelevitz had shifted his specialization primarily to the mouth-operated sip and puff controller, which he marketed under the name Quad Control. Despite this specialization, Yankelevitz continued to play a central role in advancing the field and offering custom adjustments and personal service. So here you can see some images of the use and a schematic sketch of this quad controller on his webpage. During the late 1980s, the Atari joystick began to lose its popularity. Game manufacturers increasingly shifted towards their own controller and connector designs, tailored exclusively for their own systems, such as the Super Famicom by Nintendo or the PlayStation 1994 by Sony. The most problematic issues, however, was the steady growth in complexity of controllers and games, 3D graphics that required enhanced hand-eye coordination, simultaneous button presses, and reactive responses to in-game prompts. This growth of complexity is most notably reflected in the growing complexity of controllers themselves, marked by the proliferation of buttons and additional control elements. This trend culminated in Sony's DualShock controller for the PlayStation, which featured a groundbreaking total of 17 buttons, which is still a common number in controller design, by the way. While such an adjustment might be unproblematic for players using both hands, it posed a significant challenge for Ken's clients, who often played primarily with their mouth. Yankelevitz's response to this trend was, of course, the addition of further input elements for his controllers and relying on one single functional design, the sip and puff foundation of the mouth-operated controllers that was compatible with different consoles. In this sketch of the standard quad controller, you can see how many input options were now available. Besides 2 fire buttons that could be operated by the upper and lower lip, the mouth control panel was equipped with 3 sip and puff tubes. 2 replaced the 4 shoulder buttons of a PlayStation 1 controller, and the 3rd tube was used for 2 other fire buttons. The control panel was also supported by a joystick, which, through precise movements of the mouth, replaced the directional analog joystick. It is evident that such a complex contraption requires a high level of practice and finesse in the player's use of their mouth, which Ian Rodder aptly refers to as oral acrobatics. Until 2011, Ken offered his mouth controller for several consoles through his online store. By that time, the now 69-year-old had reportedly handcrafted over 700 controllers. He eventually decided that due to his advanced age and his Parkinson, he could no longer continue this time-intensive craft. He also knew that there was no suitable successor to take over this much-needed service. This left many gamers without the means to continue playing games. And since the game industry's stance on accessibility had remained unchanged since the 1980s, the industry simply wasn't an option. Journalist Stephen Dockery then published several articles on Yankelevitz and his dilemma in 2011 across numerous newspapers, as you can see here. Among the readers of these articles was Fred Davison, a computer engineer with profound experience who contacted Yankelevitz to work on a new prototype. Davison was aware that while he could serve as Ken's successor, he could also refine and enhance the design and engineer the circuit boards himself. By 2014, Davison had developed a functional prototype that had a joystick, 4 sip and puff sensors, a lip position sensor, and a push switch connected to a 32-bit ARM processor that converts the sensor inputs into USB and Bluetooth signals for host devices. Although This design was superior to Yankelowit's quad controller and was even suitable for competitive online gaming. Its development and manufacturing process was significantly more expensive. For this reason, Davison launched a Kickstarter project, the Quad Stick, which was a remarkable success and remains one of the most important accessible gaming devices. Ken Yankelowitz died in 2016, but his legacy, the Quad Stick, is now endorsed by many disabled gamers and charity organizations such as Able Gamers. It is also showcased by professional streamers such as Rocky No Hands and celebrated in gaming magazines. It is even advertised by Microsoft. Ultimately, the Quad Stick is steadily gaining recognition as a milestone in accessible gaming history, and it is a worthy continuation of Ken Yankelowicz's pioneering work in accessible gaming. I have reached the end of my presentation, and thank you very much for your attention. And if you're interested in having a closer look at the images I used, here is the list of references where you can find the images I used in my talk. Have a nice day.
I think Patricia did a great job of kind of summarizing this talk when she said, this Ken guy is a hero. Like I said, it can sometimes be really easy to lose track of those who started doing game accessibility work. I mean, frankly, before some of you in chat were even born. Uh, and so knowing that someone started this work in the 70s that led to what was the quad stick in the early 2000s is amazing. And even just being able to take a moment for people to learn his name and his story is fantastic. So I'm really glad that we were able to have this and, make sure that his name isn't lost to history and we can carry on the memory and continue his work. Because isn't that all while we're here to make games more accessible? So with that, we are wrapping up our micro talks and we're going to take our next break. So this is a longer one and we will be back at 15 after. So I will catch you then. So yes, see you on the other side of the break. Hello. Quiet. Quiet whispers coming back. All right, hello everyone. I hope that again I didn't startle you too much. But we are back from the break and on our last section of talks for day one of the Game Accessibility Conference. So our next talk is again going back to the longer format talk, and we all know that accessibility drives a better product and increases your audience. Oh my God, I have chocolate on my face. Sorry. Well, I guess everyone knows what I was doing over break now. I was having some snacks. We all know that accessibility drives a higher quality product and can increase your audience. But how do you successfully share this information? And what does it look like when you actually incorporate that into your culture and development? Well, we're really lucky for this next talk where we're going to get to hear from two of my favorite people about how to do this and what it looks like in a game when you actually make it happen. Let's check it out.
Hi everybody. Today, along with Xander Ashwell, I'm here to talk to you about accessibility as a business strategy. And with this talk, you get a 2-for-1. The presentation is going to take place in 2 parts. In the first part, I'm going to share some insights about why accessibility is key to a good business strategy. And in the second part, Xander Ashwell from Rare Limited is going to share a little bit about Rare's accessibility journey. First, a little bit about me and why I'm one of the folks talking to you all today. Hi, my name is Anna Weismeyer, and my pronouns are she, her. I'm a senior product manager on the Gaming for Everyone team at Xbox. I've been floating around the game accessibility space for a little while now, working on projects such as the Accessible Games Initiative and the Xbox Accessibility Tags. A couple years ago now, I launched the Game Accessibility Workshop Toolkit. And before that, I helped launch some programs within Xbox Research to get accessibility player panels and an accessibility insiders group started so that Xbox can learn from the amazing game accessibility community about how to continue improving our games. And yes, in my spare time, I have been known to save a duckling or two from our neighborhood storm drains, hence the adorable baby duck picture. Okay, enough about me. Let's talk about game accessibility and how it is key to a good business strategy in gaming. First, and likely foremost, when considering your business strategy, you're going to want to think about your audience. Let's consider the gaming audience, both the active, already engaged one, and the potential market of folks who are not gaming yet. So, there are roughly over 8 billion people in the world today, and over 3 billion of those people currently play video games. That's already a huge audience to consider when designing gaming content and platform experiences. In addition to that, we'll want to consider the potential audience, the folks who aren't playing games yet, but could be. There's at least a 4 to 4.5 billion person difference between the worldwide population and the gaming population, if I'm doing my math right. So that's a lot of additional folks we could be reaching with our gaming experiences. And with so many people to consider, that's also a lot of experiences and capabilities that we're potentially designing for. In fact, the Entertainment Software Association, or the ESA, recently put out their 2025 Essential Facts about the United States video game industry. This report states that 21% of adult players in the United States report having a disability. And many worldwide statistics echo similar numbers. Anywhere from 20 to 30% of players likely have a disability of some kind. This means that the ways in which players engage in gaming experiences may vary widely across the gaming population. Some folks might play with 2 hands on a television. Others might play with 1 hand and their chin on a computer. And more people are coming up with creative gaming setups so that they too can enjoy gaming, even when gaming experiences aren't made with them in mind. And it's important to note that these numbers are also likely an underrepresentation of the number of people experiencing accessibility barriers in gaming. When people respond to surveys like this one, the one from the Entertainment Software Association, about their disability status, they're often thinking of what we call the medical model of disability. Do they have, or maybe think they have, a medically diagnosable condition? And while, as the 21% demonstrates, this group on its own is already a significant portion of the population, accessibility actually affects a much wider range of folks than those with a diagnosable condition. So in case you're not already familiar, to understand the business case for accessibility, it's helpful to know and to use what we call the social model of disability. This model thinks about disability not as a personal health condition, but instead as mismatched human interactions, meaning that there's a mismatch between what the person needs and what the environment delivers. And when you think about disability from the social model perspective, the audience of folks experiencing disability gets very large very quickly. This graphic represents the inclusive design persona spectrum. It provides examples of how people with different conditions may experience similar accessibility barriers. For example, a bartender in a loud environment is going to rely more on visual cues than auditory ones, much like someone who has a temporary ear infection or someone who is deaf or hard of hearing. And it's important to note here that the persona spectrum is not claiming that these experiences are the same, but is instead noting that accessibility features that may have been designed for someone with a permanent condition can also help people with temporary or situational conditions. Subtitles are a great example of this. Subtitles were originally developed in the 1800s to provide dialogue for silent films that had no audio. In the early 1900s, they were used for translating dialogue to international audiences. And in the later 1900s, closed captioning was developed for people who are deaf or hard of hearing. But since then, people all over the world use subtitles, even when they're watching something in their own language, like I do, that they don't need translation for, and even when they have no diagnosed auditory-related conditions. So subtitles are a really clear example of a feature designed for specific purposes that has extended well beyond those original design intents. And don't take my word for it. Game developers across the industry have shared information about how popular subtitles are. Ubisoft is probably one of the best known for sharing that when subtitles were turned on by default, 97% of people playing Far Cry New Dawn left them on, and 95% of people playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey left them on. And then just last year, in 2025, Rebellion shared that 97% of Zombie Army 4 Dead War players played with subtitles on, and 96% of Sniper Elite 5 players also played with subtitles on. And this is particularly impressive if you think back to the data I showed from the Entertainment Software Association's report, in which 16% of United States players identified as having a hearing-related disability. That difference there is huge between 16% reporting having the disability and 96% of players using the feature, right? This shows that the benefits of subtitles are extending well beyond the population of folks who are deaf or hard of hearing, which is oftentimes why games include subtitles in the first place. So let's tie this all back to business strategy now. And to do that, I'm going to use an example from a different industry just for a moment. Cars. So imagine that you're looking for a car to buy. You see a really nice car in the lot. It's exactly the color you like. It has all the extra features you like. Maybe a sunroof. And the price is great. You're really excited about this car. So you ask to get in and test drive it. Then you get into the car and you realize that you aren't able to adjust how far back or forward the seat is. You can't adjust the steering wheel or the seat belt or any of the mirrors. So the car looks really nice on the outside. But it doesn't matter because you can't drive it. It's only been made with a very specific person in mind, and that person isn't you. Now imagine you get into a second car. This one's maybe a dull color, has none of the fancy features you like, but you get in and you can adjust everything. The seat positioning back and forward, up and down, the steering wheel, the mirrors. It is really comfortable to drive. Which one are you going to consider purchasing? The one that looks pretty, but you can't drive? Or the car that you can actually use for the purpose that it was intended? Games aren't any different. Players value being able to customize a game to best meet their needs. A game that a player can't actually play is, in my opinion, nothing more than a digital paperweight taking up space in their gaming catalog. It might look pretty. It might even have all the extra features that they love, right? And maybe even that content, right? But what's the point if they can't play it? As a business, you have to consider that if people can't play your games, it's also not worth it to spend their time or money on your games. Accessibility in games is an opportunity to differentiate yourself in the gaming market. It makes it possible for some players to play your game who may not have been able or wanted to otherwise, while simultaneously improving the experience for your current gaming audience. At its core, accessibility is all about customization. It's about giving players the features that they need or want to create the most individualized experience for themselves. And by building in more accessibility features, you are providing more players a pathway to engaging with your game. And if you think about the full spectrum of competition that games are up against, it's not just other games you need to think about. It's also other forms of media and entertainment. When you consider this much larger attention economy, it becomes even more imperative for games to be up to par on accessibility. Consider that even mainstream online streaming services like Netflix now offer accessibility features such as audio description and sign language on many of their titles. Remember that car example from earlier? It can also be used to describe people's choices for media-based entertainment. For example, if I have to pick between a game that doesn't have the features I need to play and a TV show or a movie that does, I'm gonna pick the one I can engage with, the TV show or the movie, even if what I really want to do in that moment is play a game. And folks within the industry are sharing more and more data that demonstrates the importance of accessibility and customization for players. For example, in a 2024 Game Accessibility Conference presentation, Rémi Bouton from Ubisoft shared some statistics about players' use of difficulty levels in Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. He shared that 44% of players played the game on the default difficulty setting. This means that 56%, that's over half of players, chose to play on a setting other than the default one. 37% played one of the other preset difficulty options, and a full 20% of their audience chose the fully customizable experience, the custom difficulty setting. And it's possible that by not including those other options, the team would have missed out on a large portion of players who could enjoy their game. And we're seeing these kinds of data across more and more studios and franchises. In 2025, Activision shared their Inclusive Growth Report and reported that almost half of their players access the accessibility settings menu and use a feature that simplifies navigation for the player, called Intelligent Movement. That's a lot of players whose needs might not have been met if that feature had not been present. And this reminds me of the audio visualization feature in Fortnite that was initially limited to specific platforms and is now used widely across their player base. And as of 2024, is turned on by default for all players. So while it was initially, and I think still is, described on their website as an accessibility feature, functionally, it has become a core game mechanic. And if you again consider the demographic information I shared earlier, these usage numbers become even more impressive. While at minimum 20% of players report having a disability, we're seeing accessibility feature usage that is at least double that in games. And it's not just feature usage. the availability of these features translates to purchasing decisions. In a 2025 developer blog post, Xbox shared that more than 10% of visitors who discover a game through the Accessible and Games marketing channel go on to purchase that title. In addition, the gaming industry as a whole has begun to recognize the importance of accessibility. The inclusion of accessibility features and innovation in this space is being recognized and rewarded more and more throughout the industry. Since 2021, we've seen a huge increase in the number of game industry awards recognizing excellence in accessibility and accessible design. We have the Innovation in Accessibility Award from the Game Awards. We have the Indie Game Awards Accessibility Award. And even IGN has an entire article dedicated to the best accessible games of 2025. I pulled together this incredibly short list, honestly, but there are more, and you can go deeper and deeper into the list of industry recognition for accessibility if you just do some Google searches and things like that. So in sum, if you take nothing else from what I've said, remember that accessibility is for everyone. It benefits everyone. It creates a better player experience, which as a business means that you have more players who are happier and more eager to play your games and tell their friends about playing your games. And then you also get that better visibility for all the hard work you and your team have put into designing a gaming experience. So, as far as I'm concerned, accessibility isn't a nice to have. It's critical to reaching the audiences that you want with the highest quality experiences and visibility for your title. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Xander Ashwell from Rare Limited.
Thanks, Anna. I'm really proud to talk to you lovely folks today about our accessibility journey at Rare. I'm Xander Ashwell, Director of UX and Accessibility at Rare Limited. I've spent 10 years in the industry with a similar chunk of time spent in the web, software and app verticals prior to AAA gaming. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm a middle-aged white man with a ridiculous haircut, wearing a bright jumper, and I am what you would visually describe as some sort of scruffy collection of poor fashion choices. I work at Rare, where we've been making games for over 40 years, from soldering circuit boards for arcade machines through all kinds of hardware and software to present day. If you've played Banjo-Kazooie, GoldenEye, Killer Instinct, Battletoads, Viva Pinata or Sea of Thieves, you'll know what makes Rare games special. Players making stories together. So let's zoom in on Sea of Thieves. Since launch in 2018, our title has over 40 million players, spent 8 years in retail, ships on Xbox PC and PS5, in 82 regions across 15 languages, delivering 19 seasons of free content. But is it accessible, I hear me ask on your behalf? Well, I'm glad I asked that for you. Our state in 2018 could be summarised as room for improvement. We didn't have narration. Our keybind remapping was basic. Colourblind players couldn't see the lovely red cross that showed them where the gold was buried on our treasure maps because they were often overlaid on top of green foliage. Fast forward to present day. Since 2018, we've shipped 160 plus free updates to the title, and 53% of those updates included accessibility improvements or features. We have dedicated web pages for accessibility information, highlighting both the feature set and the limitations the game has, as well as a support site with how-to content for those features. We have a dedicated feedback channel on our support site for accessibility feature requests. We regularly engage with accessibility consultants to provide us with valuable insights into their lived experience, both of gaming in general and within Sea of Thieves specifically. We speak on accessibility here at GaConf, as well as at other studios at the European Disability Forum, and keep a big old watch this space for future talks. And we have our own internal programmes to drive support and awareness, including our very own Topher Winwood's Accessmas initiative, which is both wildly successful and is also a suspiciously effective vehicle for delivering puns, which is a terrible affliction that Topher suffers from. We also won BAFTA for the Best Evolving Game in 2021. We were nominated in 2019 and 2025 as well. We won Most Improved Award at GaConf 2023 and were nominated the Greatest Accessibility Innovation of GaConf in 2023 as well. We were also nominated Best Post-Launch Accessibility in 2020 by Can I Play That? And Rare Studios was nominated Most Dedicated Studio at GaConf 2022 and 2024, as well as Can I Play That in 2021 and 2020. More recently, we won MCV Develops Accessibility Innovation of the Year 2025, and to cap it all off, we eventually won Most Dedicated Studio Award at GaConf in 2025. So how did we do it? Well, culture and mindset are critical. Accessibility is fundamentally about the quality of our product, and quality is a culture and mindset conversation. Building visibility, empathy, and awareness is vital to embedding accessibility into an organization. We took an iterative approach. Starting from scratch with a live service product with very little accessibility accommodation for players can feel overwhelming, but little improvements stack up over time. We distribute accountability. One person can't solve all the problems. This is where culture helps, building visibility, awareness and empathy across specialisms, and signposting clearly how they can learn and get help. We take a non-medicalised view on disability. Framing disability as solely a medical diagnosis minimises the needs of players and the potential impact of your efforts. Everyone benefits from more customisation. This is about your players, your customers, not just a subset. And don't go alone. There's a ton of incredible communities, support and resources online. A great example of this is GaConf's Discord and Anna Weissmeyer's Game Accessibility Workshop Toolkit. Both great examples of the support that you can find across the industry. So what lessons did we learn? Well, as I mentioned earlier, iterate. Small barriers are still barriers, so don't wait to ship value to players. The smallest change in your experience can make the difference between inclusion and exclusion. Advocate for iterative processes within your studio and validate impact with real users. Match design intent. Incorporate the intentional barriers and break down unintentional barriers. Intentional barriers are fun when they hit the sweet spot of capability and reward being aligned and balanced. Otherwise, they can be boring or frustrating. But unintentional barriers throw players out of flow state and into deep frustration, or worse, prevent them from playing at all. Include folks with lived experience, not just for insight, but also for visibility, understanding, and building empathy on your team. We pay consultants with lived experience of accessibility accommodations to play our title and learn from their experience and expertise. And admit when you don't know. It's fine not to know the solution. Rather than accepting that it can't be solved, seek help. As I mentioned before, the gaming accessibility community can be a deeply supportive space. Reach out. And compliance is not usability. Doing just enough to pass platform requirements or regional laws doesn't mean suddenly everyone can access your experience. Compliance is a foundation to build on, not a target. What else did we learn? Well, when it comes to maturing capability, ensuring that you bake inclusive design in from the outset. It's not just cheaper, but you end up with a better quality design for everyone. Inclusive design is good design. It also makes financial sense. The costs of bugs increase roughly by a factor of 10 for every stage of development they're addressed in, and accessibility bugs are no different. They propagate into many downstream systems, are harder to correct without rework, and often require behavioural, content, and technical fixes when addressed in production. Distribute responsibility. One person can't do it all, but conversely, if everyone owns it, it's probably not getting done. Start with centralised accountability, but build a network of interested folks, a support network or champs programme, a core accessibility cohort with deep knowledge. Once you have a core locus of ownership and knowledge, then you can start to push out into specialist teams. And normalise. When accessibility is othered, it's easy to drop it off the end of a production cycle, get bolted on afterwards, or get treated as a nice-to-have feature. As Anna's demonstrated, accessible design is good design, and accessibility is fundamentally a quality conversation. How well does our game meet the needs of our players? Strategically, accessibility is how we make better games for more players with less risk. Here's 3 examples of why accessibility should be a core part of your strategy. Accessibility improves game quality. Accessibility features are fundamentally usability, clarity, and player control features. It makes our games more robust, more understandable, and more resilient. Accessibility expands and retains our audience. A significant portion of players use accessibility features to personalize their gameplay. These features directly influence retention and continued engagement, particularly in complex contexts. And accessibility reduces production risk. When accessibility is addressed late, it creates expensive rework, scheduling pressures, and design compromises. Now I'm going to start things at first principles here, so bear with me. But often starting at first principles is a good way to identify where any potential disagreement may lie when trying to build consensus. But as an overly reductive statement, accessibility is just making things for people. But crucially, actual, real people. We build experiences for humans. Humans are wonderfully diverse. And the experiences that we build should reflect, accommodate, and acknowledge that diversity. Now, as I said, we build things for people, and your choices as a game developer shape the game that you build. Therefore, games are designed. You are designing your game, whether you consider yourself to be a designer or not. If you have any hand in shaping the experience of your game, you are designing that game. I told you I'd start at first principles. Good design solves real problems. It solves problems for humans. And humans are delightfully diverse. Knowing about humans and their diversity helps us solve their problems. Your audience is probably more diverse than your dev team. And your game will encounter that diversity sooner or later in your production lifecycle. It's cheaper, quicker, easier, and better to incorporate that diversity at a point in the dev cycle when it is cheaper, quicker, easier, and better to pivot, adjust, or iterate. So, testing your game with people who aren't you as soon as you feasibly can de-risks your assumptions about people in your game. Now, notice that I didn't mention accessibility or disability at all. I didn't even mention the type of game that you're building. I could go further. I could replace the word game with any designed or built thing, be it a game, an app, or the built environment. This is fundamentally about building experiences that are good quality and meet the needs of the people that it aims to serve. Now, building consensus around this point has been the single most effective lever that I have encountered to breaking down barriers to building accessible experiences. I hope you can find it useful too. We build experiences for humans. Humans are delightfully diverse, and the experiences we build should not just accommodate, but celebrate that diversity. Thank you for listening.
I first want to give a shout out to our interpreters and captioners because I know that Xavier was going a mile a minute, and both of you did an amazing job keeping up. So yes, thank you. We are making sure you're earning your money today. That's sure. Wait, did fantastic. Um, I really want to start by recapping what Anna had at the very beginning. She gave us data, data, and more data. And with that, we are armed to have these discussions with everyone. And now that we have everything that she's giving us, we can use that to highlight better quality, more players, and more recognition by putting in the work. I absolutely love having all of the data. I mean, it is a gift to us all. And I love how she summarized her section. It's just good business. But as Xander said, it's more than that, right? It's culture and mindset. As developers, we have to be in the right place and in the right headspace to be able to develop. Because as he highlighted, the world, our players are probably more diverse than your dev team. And, we have a long way to go in terms of creating more diverse dev teams. But you know what? The first step to creating more diverse dev teams is going to be making our games more inclusive and welcoming for gamers with disabilities, right? It's kind of a little bit of an Ouroboros. Like, if games aren't accessible, why would people with disabilities want to be game devs? So, how would you get a diverse team? But we can do it. And I think the other thing that Rare in the Sea of Team has really shown is not only can you overcome obstacles like having someone on your staff who's just constantly throwing out puns even after you've asked them to stop, but incremental progress is progress and still can result in great, great things. Even a small change, when stacked up with a bunch of other small changes, can make a huge, massive impact. So, with that, we are going to take a 10-minute break and then we will be back for the last talk of day one. See you then. All right. It is officially time for the last talk of the day, and this is a great one to end on. We love supporting gamers. We love helping young gamers in particular recover from burnout, and we love the charities who are doing so. So, up next, we are going to hear about Spectrum Gaming, an autistic-led UK charity who's creating joyful and safe experiences through gaming. So, let's check it out.
Hello, I'm Kerry from Spectrum Gaming, and I'm going to be talking about how we use gaming to create joyful and safe spaces for the autistic young people in our community. Spectrum Gaming is an autistic-led UK charity that supports autistic young people aged 10 to 17 who are struggling with long-term isolation, burnout, and mental distress as a result of living in a world not designed for their sensory, communication, or social needs. We officially became a charity in 2021, but we existed for a few years prior to this as a gaming group that was set up by Andy, who is SG's creative director and founder. He was motivated to set up the charity because of the huge struggles that he had faced as an undiagnosed autistic young person, where he never felt that there was a place where he could really be himself, which of course had a hugely negative impact on his well-being. As a result of this, his life goal is to make sure as many autistic young people as possible avoid the struggles that his generation and previous generations have faced. And this is a picture of Andy doing a forfeit at one of our 24-hour gaming marathon fundraisers. As a charity, we work across 4 main areas. Our online services is where we provide a safe space online which is supervised by trusted adults where young people can explore, connect and grow with others. In our face-to-face services, we offer opportunities for young people to meet with others and undertake positive activities together. With advocacy, we work with young people, parents and partners to identify the priorities of young people and creating resources that address these priorities. And finally, we offer training and guidance to those who need it most and build a community who share our passion and vision to create change. So this is to demonstrate really how much we've grown from that small gaming group to supporting 1,000 autistic young people each year who are based all over the UK. So here's some of our engagement stats from 2025. So we had 1,815 attendees at our online events, and young people sent 534,381 messages on Discord and had a total playtime on Minecraft of 2 years, 41 weeks, 1 day, 21 hours, 12 minutes, and 49 seconds. So you can see how much our online services are really heavily used by the young people in the community. So to briefly pause from talking about SG to properly introduce myself. So yeah, I'm Kerry and I'm the Funding and Development Manager for Spectrum Gaming. And I've just made a little diagram to explain why I ended up at SG. So I'm a late diagnosed autistic woman and I was working in fundraising. I'd been working in fundraising, I think I've been working in fundraising for 4 years at this point. And one of my main hobbies is gaming. And so I saw that SG had a job opening in fundraising, which just felt like the perfect fit for me. And luckily, yeah, I got the job. And yeah, here's just some of the games that I really enjoy. I think Red Dead is still my all-time favorite. And yeah, just still not over what happens to the horse. So yeah, we've got something that I think is exciting about Spectrum Gaming is that the majority of the staff staff team are autistic. As an autistic staff member, it's great to be working in a space where I don't feel that I have to explain myself every day. In previous workplaces, there was a really static understanding of what accommodations meant, but at Spectrum Gaming, there's an understanding that support needed might differ throughout the week. The biggest revelation of a workplace being this accessible for me is that I can just focus on showing up and doing my job instead of exerting energy on trying to make myself appear as not autistic as possible. A big thing that we do at Spectrum Gaming is like taking a neuroaffirming view of autism. So our belief is that autism is not a disorder and being autistic doesn't make you a burden. But this is sadly a mindset that a lot of young people have when they first join us because of negative messaging that's been picked up from other places. And it's even one that you can see throughout charities that are supporting autistic people. So some really sad research from 2025 found that out of the 11 charities with incomes over 10 million that support autistic people, every single one of those charities depicts autistic people as needing to change. Autistic people, they say, should be more communicative or resilient. These charities will carry a huge amount of influence, so it's really worrying that they perpetuate this myth, and it's really damaging to the community. And it's just a narrative that we will always really loudly push back on. But what's so important about being a charity for autistic people by autistic people, and what are the benefits of this for the young people in our community? So the first thing is that we've designed services that really works for them because of that shared understanding, the shared struggles and experiences that we've had, the understanding that there are different communication needs. So, for example, every online event that we host is designed to accommodate both spoken and written communication. Part of the reason why gaming became such a big part of how we support our community members is that we wanted people to be able to join in group activities and have fun with others, even if they didn't have the energy to make any conversation. Young people are then also in youth spaces with staff who get it, where they can be themselves without explanation, and this really helps for them to engage and settle into the community. And finally, young people really look up to our staff team as role models for what they could achieve themselves in the future. This just gives them such a big boost in their confidence and just renews those feelings of hope for their future lives. So delving more into why online youth spaces in particular are so vital to our community. So when SG was started, we just had an understanding that traditional youth spaces just weren't accessible for the majority of autistic young people, and a big reason for that is autistic burnout. At the point that they join SG, the majority of young people are experiencing autistic burnout, which is defined as extreme long-term exhaustion and overwhelm triggered over time, where the stress of coping with life's demands exceeds the autistic person's ability to cope. The individual may lose the ability to carry out everyday tasks, lose skills they usually have, and experience increased sensory difficulties. So if you were feeling all of those feelings, would going outside to a space you'd never been before, to be around people that you didn't know well, at a very particularly scheduled time really work for you? We just really recognise that our youth club, which we do hold in Bury in Greater Manchester, might be an end goal for some of the young people in our community, but it's not usually the starting point for them. So looking at our online spaces, there's two main ways that we work online with young people. The first is our Minecraft server. So in the Minecraft world, young people create bases of their own design where they live either on their own or with friends. We also have community buildings that are constructed by groups as part of exciting projects, and there's a shopping district where members can open their own business and use various currencies such as diamonds and iron. Over on Discord, there's 2 servers. One is for young people aged under 13, and the other is for 13 to 17-year-olds. The servers are overseen by our youth workers, trained volunteers, and young staff who are there to support members to connect socially and form positive relationships. And within this server, there's 2 sort of main ways that the server's used. So there's the chat channels, which focuses on the interests of our members, and this ranges from topics including pets and animals, film and TV, and even transport. This allows members to find and connect with peers who have similar interests. And then we also have voice channels, which provide a space to hang out together, play video games, listen to music, create artwork, or just a space to chat about their days. And gaming in particular offers so much to support young people in our community to recover from burnout. Many of the young people in SG struggle with the school environment, so having a space to game socially with others helps them to decompress, where they can focus on the game but chat with people that they trust. When you've had a tough day and feel like you've not got any social situations right, we found that playing games and feeling a sense of achievement helps people to rebuild that confidence. For some young people, gaming helps them to develop their skills, including creative and communication skills. And also, obviously, a really important element to this is just that there's a space for people to have fun together, which is obviously a really big boost to their well-being as well. So I asked staff to reflect on why young people are playing the games that they play, and we came up with these 4 sort of main themes. So the first one is that young people lean towards games that are free and accessible, so the ones that are available on all platforms. Obviously, if they're free, then it's easier for people to just dip into, but there's no barriers in terms of like needing a specific device to play. Roblox in particular there's just so much variety, and young people really like that. Some of the other community members lean more towards games where there's a feeling of having a virtual pet. So Pokemon was mentioned within this, but the other bonus of Pokemon is that it spans a lot of other media, so it gets lots of interest from that, because there's just lots of different ways to connect with people over that one game. For some, they found their niche, so they know what sort of games that they like, and then they find a group who also like that game, and it just really supports them in being able to find that friendship group. So we have a group who are often playing Sims together at the moment. And finally, we have like co-op games, and obviously a popular choice for when you're sort of looking to make connections with other people over gaming. So Fortnite and Phasmophobia were mentioned by staff as popular ones with young people. So obviously a big part of what we do is making sure that our community spaces are safe for the young people to use. And we've done lots of different things to ensure that the young people accessing the community and gaming with us are kept safe. So the first thing is that we have a verification process that ensures only young people are joining the community. So when someone first joins us, they have to have a interview with it's a quick like welcome video call with staff and with a parent, and then to be verified by an external source. Our servers are moderated by our trained youth workers throughout our opening hours, which are 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. 5 days a week. And we have rules on Minecraft to give people a good gaming experience. So there's no cheats allowed, and you're not to enter other people's bases or steal things from their bases. Support tickets are also available to resolve disputes or provide additional support for a young person, or to help them find people to connect with. For example, if they want to play a specific game but didn't know anybody to play it with. So thinking about what gaming in an online use space, what impact that's having on young people, and the honest answer to this is really that everybody's journey with us is really unique to them, because we don't really have one goal, one main outcome for young people, because the community is designed to be flexible, for it to be the thing that the young person needs it for. So for some young people, the impact might just be that they have really had that opportunity to focus entirely on friendships and building connections and finding a group that they can game and chat with regularly. For others, they might want to be part of a more formal group like our Minecraft build team and to design and create experiences for others in the community. And other young people, the gaming might be the start of what helps them to build their confidence, to feel connected to more people, which then helps them to attend online or in-person meetups. So this feedback from a parent, I think, really explains the importance of how the importance of what our low demand online community does. And they let us know, they said that my son is situationally mute and therefore online interaction is easier as he is a people pleaser and cannot move away from in-person situations, so avoidance creeps in. With SG, he can say AFK, away from keyboard, and nobody thinks anything of it. As a result, he has gone from speaking to only us to a wide group of children, and he joined small meetups initially and now SG meetups in London and Sheffield. He plays with SG people every day, and I've made an excellent group of mum friends. Without SG, he would return to being completely isolated. Spectrum Gaming has been exactly what he needs and has given him a future back. So then from young people, they always, when we do feedback with them, the themes that come up is that they tell us how they found friends for the first time, how they no longer feel lonely, how being part of SG has changed their lives, and that they feel acceptance of being autistic. So if you like what we do, there's so many ways that you could help us to keep going. As a small charity, we stretch every pound as far as it can go. It costs just £500 per young person per year to access 12,480 hours of support. There are very few places that can offer autistic young people this level of consistency that they really, really need. So you can help us keep this going. With your support, we can continue providing an accepting community where autistic young people have access to timely, long-term support that could shape their lifetime. So one thing that we're doing this year is we have got a year-long fundraising event called Achievement Unlocked, which launches in June and will last until June 2027. So if you were able to take part, you'd be helping us to raise 40,000, which would be securing the community for autistic young people. We're always looking out for more people who might be interested in helping us to fundraise. If that was of interest to you, there's a contact email, which is just fundraising@spectrumgaming.net, and I'd be the person who would be supporting you with your fundraiser. So I don't know if anybody in the conference would be interested in doing a gaming marathon with other conference attendees, but that would be really amazing if that were to happen. Obviously, fundraising is quite a big commitment, so other options to support us would be donating directly to us, and there's a link on the screen to do that. Or even just following our social media pages and sharing posts that would help us to become more known. So yeah, finally, just to say thank you for letting me speak at this conference. It's not something that I would have imagined myself ever really being able to do, so I really appreciate this opportunity, and thank you for listening to me speak about a cause that I really care about. And just to say that there is a follow-up video coming from my colleague Richard, who is going to do a tour of the Minecraft server and just talk much more about Minecraft than I have the knowledge of. So yeah, thank you.
The previously mentioned website is spectrumgaming.net/support-us.
Hello, my name is Richard Turner and I am the Minecraft coordinator for Spectrum Gaming. In this video, I'm going to give you a quick tour of the servers and explain the services that Spectrum Gaming offers young people through Minecraft. Since January 2025, we've had 109 new players, and the average playtime per player is 3 days and 20 hours. In the last 2 years, the young people have racked up 20,560 hours on our servers, and the playtime in the last 6 years is 55,440 hours. The most popular servers are the survival and minigame server, so now I'll give you a little tour and explain how we run them. When young people log on, they're faced with a bunch of NPCs that will take them to different parts of the server. First one is the creative world, and young people can build in plot areas or on a normal open creative world. The second one is the survival world, and this resets every single year. Third one is the event NPC, and this only activates for special events, such as the snowball fight at Christmas. The next NPC is the minigames NPC, and this takes you to the minigames hub where we have Bed Wars, TNT Run, and parkour games. And finally, the last NPC is the destructive server, and this is a giant city that young people can blow up with TNT until the hearts are content, and it resets every day. And finally, we have the spectate NPC, where young people can go into old survival worlds and relive memories from our past survival seasons. So come with me while I give you a quick tour of each world.
Time after time, yes, I need to say sorry. Been treating me poorly. Believe that's that story. I'm not gonna
So here I am in the survival server. This is the spawn area, an area that is built by our special build team in SG. Young people can apply to be builders on the servers and help with the decoration of each spawn when the season restarts. This spawn area took about 3 or 4 months to build. The theme was decided on by the young people. So this area is built by staff and young people for the rest of SG to enjoy. This area is all protected, and it has NPCs that you can speak to when you first log in. These NPCs can be really helpful, as Fiona the fish seller gives out free fish, Pat the butcher gives out free steak, and Mark the bread vendor gives out free bread. Over here we have the town guard, who gives out a free iron sword, so that when young people leave the spawn area, which is all protected, they have a weapon to fight the dangerous mobs in the outside world. As well as having NPCs that they can talk to, there are also some secrets hidden away in this area. The NPCs give out clues to a secret area which you can find just down here. If we look behind this painting, you'll see that there is a portal, and through this portal, if they go through, there is a dungeon which they can play. As young people go through the portal, they find a secret room, and the NPCs around spawn give them clues to the password to open the dungeon. So here we put 3 blocks, and this opens a dungeon door. If I get the password right, the door opens, and that takes us into the dungeon and a series of mobs to fight with a final boss. Also, if young people go through the nether portal at spawn, it brings them here, the nether hub. This hub was also built by the build team, and it has huge tunnels going off in every direction to help them navigate the nether. Alongside the nether hub, we also have the shopping district, where young people can claim plots of land to build the shops, and they can use our special shop plugin to trade with each other. If they don't fancy building a shop themselves, they can also claim a market stall, where they're able to set up little mini shops without having to build the building around it. So that is our survival server in a nutshell, all put together by our amazing technical guys and the young builders on the build team. Now that I've showed you the survival server, here is the minigames hub. So here we are in the minigames hub, and when young people log in, they're faced with 4 minigame options: murder mystery, parkour, bed wars / PvP, they're both in the same area, and TNT run. In the murder mystery game, young people are assigned roles: detective, murderer, or innocent. The innocent's job is to escape the murderer, while the detective seeks them out. The parkour minigames contain lots of maps with different obstacle courses for young people to try. Bedwars and PvP games are all about combat. And finally, the TNT run is a mini game where the floor disappears from under your feet, and there are less and less places to stand until there is eventually one winner. Next, welcome to the creative server. In Minecraft creative mode, you don't have to gather the resources yourself. They're already there in your inventory, ready to build. Our creative servers are split into two. We have a plot world and a regular Minecraft world. In the regular Minecraft world, the world is identical to a survival world, except you don't have to gather resources. However, in the plot world, young people can claim a plot to build on. In the destructive server, we have a huge city, which we downloaded, specifically for them to absolutely destroy. Once a day, the server is reset, and buildings reappear to be blown up all over again. Every single year, when the survival server is reset, the build team are asked to build a new spawn, a nether hub, and shopping district. But currently, they are also creating a new hub. And here it is, 4 months of work so far. This will be the new Spectrum Gaming login hub. The build team is changed every year, and young people in SG can apply to be part of it. The application process involves a build challenge, and young people can apply and are then judged by the previous build team. The hub behind me has been worked on by 8 young people and a couple of staff, and will be released over the next few months. It's the biggest build team project ever done in SG, and it will probably last a few years. So there you have it. There is a quick overview of our Minecraft services in Spectrum Gaming. Our overall aim in Minecraft is to create a safe environment that encourages friendships through collaboration on projects, adventures, trading and events, all with the goal of improving the quality of life for our young people, reducing isolation and improving confidence and self-esteem. Alongside this, Minecraft can sometimes develop life skills such as problem solving, creativity, teamwork, communication skills and digital literacy. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to know more about Spectrum Gaming and our Minecraft services, you can visit spectrumgaming.net. Bye bye!
I absolutely love everything about this. And I think one of the key things to go back to at the very beginning is this is a charity for autistic children that is run by autistic people. You know, earlier in the day, there was even a comment in Discord about how often you will see a charity, particularly meant to support autistic people, not actually have autistic people on staff. And that's obviously not the case here, and there's so much love and work that's put into it. Even just loved that Harriet said in the chat, I am both delighted for these young people, but also intensely jealous and envious. That's how you know you've made something truly amazing, and just giving these kids a safe and comfortable place to collaborate, to have adventure, to make friends, and, really be able to have the experience that every kid has of just hanging out and having a good time. So I couldn't think of a better talk to end day one of the game accessibility conference on. Now, normally, right about now, if we were in person at the Pullman, Ian would be running up to me and delivering me an espresso martini, I can't do that, but I did come prepared. So it is only, just 9:30 in the morning here, so there's not a bar open yet, but I did get a canned espresso martini so I can still enjoy. Okay, you know what? It's not bad. It's not the best one I've ever had, uh, but I have had worse. So with that, we are concluding day one of the Game Accessibility Conference. As always, I want to thank our amazing vendors for everything that they did for us today with our BSL interpretation and our live captioning. Y'all are phenomenal. I also, I, I did remember to shake it, Anna. I did remember to shake it. I shook it off screen. Um, I, want to thank all of our moderators in chat for keeping everything together. And just as we close out the day, also again want to thank our sponsors, our gold sponsors of Sony Interactive Entertainment, our silver sponsors of Xbox and Rockstar, and our bronze sponsors of Ubisoft, Tencent, Reed Speaker, Electronic Arts, Descriptive Video Works, Lucid, and of course, Shara. And so, with that, we are concluding day one of the event. I can't wait to see you back here again, starting again at 10 a.m. tomorrow, your time, not my time. It's 2 a.m. my time. And it was just such a great first day, and we're gonna have another great day tomorrow. So thank you so much, and I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks, everyone.